Jamie from Inky&Scrappy, sharing with you my Christmas nativity using Lawn Fawn stamp and dies with some creative masking and stamping and a little bit of coloring. I do not actually have any of the coloring in this video, but I will explain the things that I did when I get that far. I did do a Google image search to kind of give me an idea of what I wanted it to look like. You know, there's multiple images out there. I kind of found one that I liked and kind of went to recreate it in that respect. So I did bring in the little boy and girl from Screen Time for this one for my Mary and Joseph. The bicycle built for you, the little kids in that one would work, or the people in that one would work as well, I think. I ended up covering up the lower halves of their bodies, so I wasn't overly concerned about what their legs look like. And that was ultimately why I didn't use the bicycle built for you, because of the angling on the legs, but I'm sure you could have put Joseph on the opposite side of Mary and it would have worked just fine. So for my baby Jesus, I ended up using the little boy that goes in the Hey There, Hay Rides stamp set. He kind of looks size-wise, one of the little people probably would have worked too. I just liked that he was already under some straw, and size-wise, and his arms were up, his eyes were closed. It was the closest thing to a baby in people form that I could find in all of my Lawn Fawn sets that I own. I don't have all of the little mini people ones. I just don't use them a whole lot. And then for my manger, I needed to build it. You could definitely have used the wagon to kind of help you build it in this one. I ended up bringing in the Hey There stamp set for the little fence. And of course, I used the horse. Finding animals to fit were a little bit difficult because I wanted smaller ones to kind of size down to my people. So I ended up using the baby goats from the You Goat This stamp set to kind of fill in that aspect of my nativity scene. So I'm just doing a little bit of lazy masking here. I'm okay with it kind of not being totally where it's supposed to be. I ended up deciding to go back with my grass on this one, or my hay on this one, instead of doing a top line with that fence. I just felt it, I don't know, it didn't need it. It didn't need the wood on that one. I figured the wood on both sides kind of acted as this is your manger. So that was kind of my thought process on that one. I did like the longer one better than the shorter one. Why? I just liked the sizing of it. I liked how my stamping turned out better. I didn't line up the fence as well with my smaller one, but I knew I needed a smaller one for my live that I did with the Ta-Da diorama. So if you watch the Ta-Da diorama live, or you're interested in that one, I will link it down below. It coordinates with, I did all of my stamping in one sitting for both. I knew I was going to make two. I had ideas for both, and so that was kind of, I wanted to make sure that I got both of them done and out while it was fresh on my mind. So I did stamp in some extra gates just in case I needed them, or fences, just in case I decided I needed them to scene fill. And then of course I'm going to stamp out my base images again one more time. And then I did also add in the village shops, that row of shops for kind of my inn and the town of Bethlehem that would be in the background for this card. I knew I wanted to do a 5x7, something bigger with the fuller scene. I really wanted to bring in three wise men like walking in the distance. I just couldn't figure out which stamps to use for that. I could have probably used some of them from the Mini Friends stamp sets. I just decided I needed to, stop somewhere. Yeah. Maybe the next time I do it. I did bring in that white gel pen to kind of help me clean up any of the lines that weren't supposed to be there before I actually colored them. I did plan on cutting it with the Brother Scan and Cut. I did not know how it was going to cut my manger out. If I lighten the lines and it can't read them, a lot of times it will cut where I want to, but I was okay if it wasn't going to cut. I just made sure I was very focused when I scanned it in to see how the cut lines were going to be, and it wasn't going to cut anything I didn't want it to cut. Going back in later and cutting extra off is a lot easier than trying to fix something that it wasn't supposed to cut. For my colors, I actually ended up just using that one brown color combo there and then the first sheet here. It coordinates with one of my Hello Baby stamp sets. So if you're looking for it, it is on my blog. It's on the right hand side. There's my Hoo Hoo Color Blends page, and that's where you'll find all of the colors that I used in the coloring today. So I did pull out all of my colors, and then I didn't end up using any of the green at all. It just didn't go. Now for my manger, I kind of wanted to use the barn for this one, but it just wasn't quite big enough. I probably could have built around it to make it a little bit bigger, but I ended up bringing in the roof from the Build a Cabin die set. You could also use, the roof is about the same size as the Build a Birdhouse add-on for the magic picture changer, or no, the magic iris, but that one's scalloped and I wanted it to be straight. I did bring in that base piece for the Build a House set. I don't think I ended up using it for either of them because it wasn't tall enough for my ta-da diorama, and I don't believe I needed it for this one because I just used a base piece of brown wood grain cardstock. But that one would work as well for your side pieces and or your bottom if you needed to add a base. So for my background, I'm starting with a little bit bigger than 5x7 piece of a Hoo Hoo blending cardstock marker paper. I like ink blending on it. So I'm bringing in that Tim Holtz sparkle stencil and my VersaFine marker, I guess, to kind of get my ink to stay on there. It's the easiest way to only get one image when you're looking at a stencil like that. And so that was kind of how I figured I would do it. And then I brought in Lawn Fawn's glow-in-the-dark embossing powder, so my star will glow in the dark, which I thought was kind of a fun little, added touch to it. But I really just could have gone with a clear embossing powder. I just wanted my star to stay white or lighter. And then I'm coming in with Stormy Sky Distress ink around the star, and then of course Chip Sapphire for the rest of my night sky, so it is darker, nice and dark blue. I am bringing in some Bruce Monroe aqua pigments in, I think this one's probably Blue Frost. It's whatever's still in that dish, and I splattered the background with that one. I have a little bit of moisture on my towel from cleaning my desktop, so I just buffed off whatever ink was sitting on top of my star. It looks a lot rougher on camera than it does in real life. It did dye back very nicely and looks very much like a nice sky. I hand cut my hills. I, just decided I didn't want the stitching on it, and so I just hand cut it. And, it was fun to hand cut. I haven't done that a whole lot. It's nice to get back into it. That's a shout out to Mary from Mary Fun Gun at Craft Roulette. She does hers hand cut all the time. And I'm like, I don't know why I rely on dyes so much for those things. It's kind of fun to just go back to, cutting things out by hand. Doing it all willy-nilly like. So I'm going to add in my sand dunes here for my flooring. It's going to hang out over the edge. That's fine. I will bring in my guillotine cutter here and kind of finish cutting this down. I started with the side that I knew was straight and kind of kept that in mind. I do need to trim off a little bit of the top here and a little bit of the bottom, because the bottom has a little bit of white. Now, my cutter here does not have a 7-inch score mark on it. It only goes up to 6, and so I brought in my actual card base, which is 5x7, to kind of measure out the other one. I could have cut it on my other cutter, but it's currently under a pile of stamps and dies, the ones I used to figure out how to make this one. Yeah, I have some cleaning to do. I'm coming back in with some distress ink in, I want to say for my hillsides there, I did walnut stain, and I did bring in, I think I might have kept up with the walnut stain on this one. I might have brought in the ground espresso distress ink, not the oxide, just to give it some more depth and character. It really helps that ink, I don't know, or the wood grain on that cardstock stand out. My wood grain cardstock here is from envelopes.com. I have a, I don't know, whatever's in a ream of it, and it comes in handy frequently. So it was a big investment to start with, but it definitely kind of works well. I ended up using, so I had these sticks already cut and kind of colored from one of my past projects. It's from the crate. I think it's the crate. So the little stick, like the pick that goes in the crate with the little sign, it's that stick from the Build-A-Crate. Is it the Build-A-Crate, or it's the crate stamp or die set? So that's where those sticks came from, but you could have just cut them out by hand. I just had them on my desk, so I was like, oh, they'll work. That also would have worked to use the piece from that Build-A-House stamp set that I had pulled out and die cut. It happens. I'm bringing in some palm trees here from, I have a couple of different palm tree sets from Lawn Fawn. So the one that has the 3 different sizes, and then the ones that go with the palm tree and, is it like the hammock? Oh, so the 3 different sizes come from the backdrop one, and then the ones that are the same size come from the hammock die set. So I'm using both of them. I liked the different sizes, and it gave me some options. So I'm going to add in my manger there, and then of course kind of figuring out placement before I lay everything down and what I'll want and where I want it. I wanted to fit everything in. It was just a matter of trying to fit it in. Now I kind of wanted to make sure, the animals are going to be squished inside or as close as possible, just because it's technically their barn, and so I kind of wanted to make sure that they were included in them, but I wanted to make sure that the baby Jesus and Mary and Joseph were kind of in the center of that manger scene, if that makes sense. So I'm just kind of working around it and, making sure that I'm covering up the base part there. I really didn't want the bottom of the manger to show. And then I'm going to pop up my manger here with baby Jesus in it. Now, when I cut this out, I added my baby on there, and you could definitely tell there was like area, like the line was there. So I ended up coming back in with a darker yellow to make my hay kind of, or my straw kind of blend in with the rest of that die cut image, and it blended it in very well. If that's, if you're wondering how I did that, it was really just kind of playing with it to see what was going to look the best, and that was all I did with it. So I'm going to add on that big piece here, and I have a lot of real estate up on top. I could have added maybe another hill further up instead, and then maybe gotten the Wiseman like further back behind the town, but that was kind of where I was like, well, I'd almost just need like little itty bitty tiny stick figures walking in, and so I didn't want to go that route. I don't know. It was an option. So if that's, something you're interested in. So I'm coming in with one of the bigger palm trees on the front here. I'm going to pop up the fronds on this one, and then of course I also popped up the actual palm tree base piece to give me a little bit more depth and dimension as well. I'm also coming in with some Distress Black Soot ink to kind of add a little bit of a nighttime scene to it, or a night. I didn't want it to be so bright. Everything else has got some ink blending or some distressing on it, and so I wanted it to blend in. I also did come in with that brown that was on my blending brush to kind of dull the white that's around my fence pieces. I just didn't want them to be full-on stark white when it's A, night out, and B, their background is sand. So it kind of helped them blend in a little bit with the sand. And of course, I did have to sneak the little cow in there. He just needed to be there. We dairy farm, so, that was my nod to Dairy Farm. Yeah, I needed the cow. So I'm filling in the rest of my scene with some of those hay bales, or well, to me they're yellow, so they're straw bales. And then I'm going to cut off everything that's overhanging. I was careful with my placement on my goat because I knew I was going to have to trim it off a little bit there and go that route. Now, I did cut off my fence on the one side, and I felt like I needed to tuck it in and behind, and so that fence looked like it was continuous all the way along the manger there. It just kind of helped to close it up or finish it up. And then adding in another piece of foam tape where it was kind of hanging out. Now, for my sentiment, I wanted it to kind of match a little bit, but not totally. So I'm coming in with some of that metallic white cardstock from envelopes.com and then my Oliver stitched ABCs. And I'm just going to spell out Holy Night. So I went with my colors that matched Joseph and baby Jesus and did the darker and the lighter on top, kind of doing an ombre effect on them. They sparkle and they shine and they kind of pull in the color from down below up into the sky. And I liked the look of it. Now I also had some of those pre-done sentiment strips from Tailored Expressions. It's their Christmas sentiment, like easy. I think they're called easy strips. I'm not positive, but it's the Christmas one. And so there was like 4 or 5 that worked with the nativity scene. And so I snapped a picture to my crafty friends and said, which one do you like better with it? And, you know, of course, they're like, well, the bottom one. And I'm like, what was the bottom one? It didn't save the picture. I'm just like, oh, I don't know. But I ended up deciding I really loved the Love Was Born in a Manger. But I really wanted to use that one with my Ta-Da diorama card. And so I ended up picking a different one for this one. So when I had all of my letters lined up off to the one side, I just wasn't in love with it. And I thought, you know what? If I put them on my highlighter tape, this is my favorite trick, especially if I'm not positive where I want them placed on my card. I knew I wanted them in a straight line. And so by coming in with that highlighter tape and picking them up, and yes, I totally botched it on this one. But on that night one, it picked it up well, and I could move it around on my card without too much effort to kind of see where I liked that placement a little bit better. And so once I decided on placement there, it was a lot easier. So now for my holy, it was a holy mess. And so I kind of pulled it up and adjusted those letters to make them look straighter once they were already kind of had glue on them, and wiggled them around. So it worked all right. So this was where I was like, and so I decided to switch it out for the Glory to the Newborn King. It was a little bit longer on the sentiment. The green on that one went with my palm trees, so I didn't have to stamp and die cut another set out. It was a happy accident that it was the same green. Life happens that way sometimes. So I did pop that sentiment up on top of the Holy Night on this one. So I really liked that it had a lot of real estate there for my sentiment on top, but that scene definitely kind of shines through on the bottom. And maybe Lawn Fawn will come up with a actual nativity stamp set one of these years. I hope you have an amazing day, a great Christmas. Take care and be blessed. Bye.